मोदी को प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए इन्होंने वो केस लिया था।
जो उस इतिहास में दर्ज है उनको पढ़ें और लौट कर पूछे मम्मा सोची के उससे हमने कितना पैसा दिया था।
सुषमा जी दुनिया में पहली ह्यूमैनिटेरियन है जो छुपकर ह्यूमैनिटेरियन काम करते हैं।
आपका संसद सदस्य यहाँ आके महिला मंत्री के सामने कुछ करे, अच्छा नहीं होगा।
हिम्मत करेंगे हिंदुस्तान की पार्लियामेंट को चलाने की।
जिसने आपको वोट दिया वो चाहता है कि पार्लियामेंट ना चले, आप दोषी हैं इस बात के।
On the penultimate day of the monsoon session, we finally had a debate. It was not a constructive one. The GST deadlock continues, but nonetheless, the Lok Sabha finally functioned for at least a day. All of that and more coming up for you in just a bit, but here's a look at the other headlines that we're tracking this evening.
We vote for them and they are concerned with their partisan interests.
अगर उद्योग जगत ये चाहता है कि वो राजनीति में हिस्सा लेना चाहते हैं तो उनको एक सामान्य और समानांतर प्रतिक्रिया रखनी पड़ेगी। ये नहीं कि कभी किसी मुद्दे के ऊपर आप बोल दिए और बाकी मुद्दों के ऊपर आप चुप रहे।
30,000 and counting support pours in for a petition started by top corporate leaders urging parliamentarians to pass the GST bill, but the Congress hits back, asks why India Inc. is silent on Lalit Modi and the Vyapam controversies.
A double delight for the economy. Inflation cools down to 3.78% in July thanks to a sharp fall in vegetable prices. Industrial production rises closer to 4%, hitting its highest level in 4 months.
China stuns the global markets, once again allows the yuan to slide for the second straight day to lift its exports. The rupee weakens to its lowest level in 2 years against the dollar.
Bell sees control of the Wall Street as markets see sharp cuts for the third straight session. Nifty sheds over 100 points to break below 8,400. Sensex tanks by 350 points.
Telecom companies finally get some flexibility with the spectrum that they own. The cabinet allows telcos to share spectrum provided both parties own airwaves in the same band. Spectrum trading still not allowed.
Temporary relief for Dayanidhi Maran. Supreme Court restrains the CBI from arresting the former telecom minister till 14th of September in the illegal telephone exchange case. Warns the government of pursuing political vendetta.
Nestle expresses shock and disappointment after the government files a 640 crore rupee class action suit against the company over the Maggi controversy. This even as the Bombay High Court gears up to deliver its verdict in the case tomorrow.
The wait is finally over for 6 crore investors duped by Pearl Agrotech. Securities Appellate Tribunal upholds the SEBI order and directs the company to refund a whopping 49,000 crore rupees.
Cash and carry was a logical choice. With the market, with the small store owners, kirana shops that are there in the country, the size of the market was really beckoning us.
Over a year after it ended its joint venture with Bharti, Walmart opens its first cash and carry store in Agra, targets 50 more stores in India over 5 years.
I feel God has created everybody with the same source, from the same pool of energy we all came from. So somewhere, whether you are Indian, African, whatever religion you are, we are all united.
The Mozart of Madras talks about what makes music a universal language.
India develops a serious affinity to plastic money. Debit and credit card usage crosses 2,11,000 crore rupees in FY15. But first up, the big global story that shook global equity markets. China inflicts more pain on the currency market as it looks to boost a flagging economy back home. The People's Bank of China has lowered its guidance rate for the yuan by 1.6% today compared to yesterday's closing trade. So the midpoint for the currency is at around 6.3 against the dollar. The midpoint is a guiding rate from which trade can rise or fall 2% during the day. And this comes on a day after the Chinese authorities surprised markets by devaluing the country's currency by nearly 2%. But be prepared for more such surprise cuts. That's the word coming in from the former head of IMF's China arm, Iswar Prasad. The chief economic advisor, Arvind Subramanian, says policymakers across the world will have to take some rearguard action. Listen in.
That on top of this 2% devaluation, the Chinese central bank might allow the currency to float down another 3 to 4%, which again would be conditional on how strong the dollar is, because if the dollar continues to remain strong or even becomes stronger relative to all other currencies, that may lead China to move a little more aggressively.
What China has done is two things. It has, on the one hand, devalued the currency, but it's also what they have done is also a measure aimed really at reducing the spread between onshore and offshore rates. This action is both an endeavor to make the yuan a more plausible, credible candidate for inclusion in the SDR basket, but at the same time there is no doubt that China is responding to its own internal development, slowing down of the growth and exports, in order to give its economy a boost. And all of us, policymakers around the world, including in India, have to take notice of these actions.
Countries, including India, will have to start tweaking their policies. But the devaluation of the Chinese yuan, coupled with the logjam in Parliament, turned out to be a disastrous session for our markets. Markets saw some sharp cuts for the third straight session. Nifty slumped over 100 points, but more importantly, it's below 8,400, going home at 8,349. Sensex tanked by over 350 points. The sell-off was broad-based. Mid-caps got hammered in trade. That index falling by over 2%. And let's get stock specific. It is to do with the government's divestment drive. CNBC TV 18 was the first to tell you about this last night, and now it's official. The government's decided to divest 10% stake in coal mining major Coal India via the offer for sale route. Merchant bankers have been asked to submit their proposal by the 2nd of September, and a 5% discount may also be offered to Coal India employees. Remember, the 10% stake could fetch the exchequer almost 25,000 crore rupees and will go a long way in helping the government achieve its divestment target of almost 70,000 crores. Coal India also reported its earnings today, which were slightly below street estimates, even though sales jumped by 5%, profits jumped by 15%.
All right, let's now get to the big story of the day. After 15 days of adjournments and more adjournments, Parliament finally debated the Lalit Modi controversy. Sushma Swaraj took the gloves off quite literally and launched a no-holds-barred attack on the Congress party. Defending herself, Swaraj said she did nothing wrong and blamed the UPA government for going slow on the probe against former IPL chief. But the Congress will have none of it. Rahul Gandhi launched the counter-offensive, hitting out at the Prime Minister. Gandhi quipped the PM has no guts to appear before the House and accused Swaraj of being on the payrolls of Lalit Modi.
आपको बहुत शौक है छुट्टियां मनाने का, 2-2 महीने आप छुट्टियां मनाते हैं। आप जाइए किसी दिन, इस बार की छुट्टी में कहीं एकांत में बैठकर अपने परिवार का इतिहास पढ़िए, उन्हें कहिए अकेले में बैठकर क्वाट्रोची से शहरयार तक के सारे काले कारनामे जो उस इतिहास में दर्ज हैं उनको पढ़ें और लौट कर पूछें, मम्मा क्वाट्रोची के उससे हमने कितना पैसा लिया था? पूछे, मम्मा 15,000 के हत्यारे को एंडरसन को डैडी ने क्यों छुड़वाया था?
Lalit Modi is a symbol of Kala Dhan in India.
You ran a failed government. You ran a corrupt government. And therefore, when things are beginning to look up in India, there is a new confidence. You somehow want to sabotage the Indian growth story.
आपके परिवार को ललित मोदी ही पैसा देते हैं। आपके परिवार उनके लीगल अफेयर्स को देखते हैं। उसी समय आप मिनिस्ट्री में उनकी मदद करती हैं।
Madam, there are still many honest people in this country whose children have to work for a living. For generations, the family which has dominated this country's politics, for generations has not worked for a living.
सुषमा जी दुनिया में पहली ह्यूमैनिटेरियन है जो छुपकर ह्यूमैनिटेरियन काम करती है.
Rahul Gandhi he's an expert without a knowledge.
Our Prime Minister said, "ना खाऊंगा ना खाने दूंगा." Today he does not have the guts to sit in this chair and take our question.
So my entire sympathies are with Sushma ji, because she is only a scapegoat, a pretext. The real reason was they wanted to prevent legislation, particularly the Constitution Amendment on the GST.
The tit for tat continuing on the penultimate day of Parliament. And with just one day left for the monsoon session, hopes are certainly bleak for the passage of the Constitutional Amendment Bill to facilitate the rollout of the GST. The Congress Party blocked the debate in the Rajya Sabha once again, a day after the bill had been tabled. And amid all of the sound and fury, the Speaker was left with no choice but to adjourn the House. Shireen.
Well, the GST delay has India's top industrialists fuming. They've started an online petition urging parliamentarians to come together to pass the bill. And the bottom line is enough is enough. The online petition has been signed by more than 25,000 people, including industry captains like Sunil Munjal, Adi Godrej, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, Rahul Bajaj, Anu Aga and many others. The petition emphasizes that legislations like the GST must not be stalled by perpetual disruptions in Parliament. We caught up with both Adi Godrej and Rahul Bajaj. While Bajaj is an ex-parliamentarian himself, he was a member of the Rajya Sabha, reiterating the fact that members of Parliament are elected to do their work and not disrupt proceedings. Godrej highlighted the need for the GST to be rolled out as soon as possible.
They should get together and pass this very beneficial reform for the country. I hope it comes about. If it can be passed in the next 2 days, this session is on. Or if another session can be called very soon thereafter, I think it will be beneficial. But if it can come as a law by April 1st, 2016, it will be extremely beneficial to the Indian economy. And I think India could have 5 years of double-digit GDP growth if the GST is in place.
We vote for them, and they are concerned with their partisan interest, and bipartisanship is not being shown to the country. It's very unfortunate, and I can only hope, and this is not a lecture, this is not advice, I am nobody to do that, but I have a right to hope. I have a right to think. I have a right to speak my mind. Whether someone listens or not, I can't help it. And that is what I'm doing, and I'm doing it with all humility, in all courtesy, but with great pride, because I am a very proud Indian.
क्या भारत का उद्योग जगत ये नहीं चाहता है कि अगर 40 कथाकथित लोग व्यापम मुद्दे से जुड़े हुए उनकी मौत हो जाए तो उसमें एक पारदर्शक जांच हो? तो अगर उद्योग जगत ये चाहता है कि वो राजनीति में हिस्सा लेना चाहते हैं तो उनको एक सामान्य और समानांतर प्रतिक्रिया रखनी पड़ेगी। ये नहीं कि कभी किसी मुद्दे के ऊपर आप बोल दिए और बाकी मुद्दों के ऊपर आप चुप रहे।
We will look for every possible way to get GST passed. Very sadly, the Congress has taken the theatre of democracy, the hallowed halls of Parliament, and instead of making it a theatre of democracy, they made it the theatre of the absurd. And today what they did to block Sushma ji from speaking, to come into the well of the House in the manner in which they conducted themselves, has demonstrated to the people of India that their agenda is very, very selfish, it's very self-serving, there is no substance in that agenda, and their only goal, as Honourable Finance Minister said today, is to thwart and block the progress of the country.
And the impasse continues. It's not just India Inc. An NGO called the Foundation for Restoration of National Values has now filed a public interest litigation in the Supreme Court against the disruptions in Parliament. This NGO has people like Ratan Tata, E. Sridharan, the man behind the Delhi Metro, and a former Chief Justice on its board. Ashmit joins us now with the details. Ashmit, so this PIL being filed in the Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court to intervene and lay out guidelines to avoid parliamentary disruptions. And of course, they're not just talking about this session of Parliament. They've actually done or mapped what's happened in terms of disruptions over the last 15 years and the cost to the exchequer.
Indeed, that's the broader question here being raised by the PIL, alleging that these disruptions have in fact caused heavy losses in terms of not just money, the exchequer, but also in terms of the public interest and the national interest that has been compromised by way of legislative action which gets stuck. Here the PIL also goes on to specifically highlight the GST as well as the land bill that is currently stuck in the monsoon session. Ample references being made to the monsoon session, the entirety of it almost being washed out, and these are the concerns that have been raised by this PIL PIL. Of course, this PIL being filed by the NGO, which boasts of the likes of corporate icon Ratan Tata, the Metro man E. Sridharan, as well as the former Chief Justice of India on its advisory board. These are the concerns being raised. And on the points of law, interesting questions being raised, at the same time unprecedented prayers these. The first one being that the PIL is seeking that the Supreme Court should lay down the guidelines for the functioning of Parliament to avoid such disruptions, one. And two, and perhaps interestingly, the PIL is also seeking the intervention of the Apex Court to ensure that there are no such further interruptions, disruptions, and that there is smooth functioning of the Parliament. So clearly, interesting questions being raised, unprecedented at that, and we're likely to see more action perhaps next week.
Well, it is an unprecedented action, a PIL being filed by an NGO in the Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court to intervene and lay down guidelines to avoid parliamentary disruptions. An unprecedented action also for industrialists, top leaders of India Inc. to sign a change petition urging parliamentarians to get down to work. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, one of the industrialists, one of the leaders of India Inc., who's actually signed on that petition, joins us now. Also Rajiv Memani of EY India. Kiran, coming to you first. What do you hope to achieve by filing this change.org petition so late in the day? We're virtually at the end of the Parliament session. Tomorrow is the last day. Should this not have been done earlier?
Well, it's a case of better late than never. I think, we are very, very concerned that the monsoon session has been washed out. And since we still have to pass many important bills, I think it's very important for all stakeholders who are concerned with the passage of many, many key bills, especially the GST and other bills that you just mentioned. I think it's very important, and that's why we're basically saying let's do something before we again lose another session.
Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, I'm getting reactions in on Twitter, and of course some of the sympathizers of the Congress party tweeting and saying, where was India Inc. when the BJP stalled Parliament across sessions when the UPA was in government? How would you respond to that?
Well, I think I've been on several debates today where I have basically said that we did express our concerns. All industry bodies actually voiced their concerns even the last time around when the BJP was stalling these bills. And I think we were almost in the same position this time around when we said, no, we've got to do something stronger than just making comments. And that is why I think we have resorted to this particular petition, because at least that becomes a much better form of expressing our concerns than just, making polite comments on various shows.
Sure. Kiran, is there a crisis of confidence now that seems to be building up in India Inc. on the ability of this government to try and push through bold economic reforms?
Well, I think it's not a crisis of confidence. I just think that we have seen this happen before, and I think we are seeing that the opposition is basically adopting strategies that basically paralyze the Parliament, and this seems to have worked before, and we certainly don't want Parliament to be paralyzed again. So I think this is a very important, point in our parliamentary history. This kind of parliamentary practice is simply unacceptable, and I'm glad to see that the NGO has also filed a PIL in court, because sometimes, somewhere, something's got to give. And I think we need to get Parliament to function, we need Parliament to legislate, and we need parliamentarians to understand what their responsibilities are and what is expected of them by citizens of this country.
Rajiv Memani, let me come to you now, because some would argue that what this petition has actually done is united the opposition. We heard from all parties today, whether it was the JDU, it was the TMC, it was the Congress party, of course, saying that India Inc. should not lecture us, and we know what to do and we know how to do our job. Do you think it's actually strengthened the attack of the opposition led by the Congress party?
I think it's an honest attempt to express a viewpoint to all the political parties concerned. It's not, I don't think it was made with the intention of casting aspersions on any political party, but so I see no reason why it should boomerang. I think the idea was it is in the interest of the country. I presume what is in the interest of the country is also in the interest of all the citizens of the country.
All right, Rajiv, let me talk to you about the goods and services tax, because even though we have 1 day left and the government is saying, we have the Minister of State for Finance saying that we're making all efforts to try and see that the GST bill goes through, it looks unlikely at this point in time. What is the mood in corporate boardrooms? Have you seen marquee foreign clients of yours being disappointed with the way things have turned out as far as the reform agenda is concerned? Has the mood on India changed?
So I think the mood, I would say, is that the mood has been that I would say for companies, for foreign investors or people who are looking at investing in India, I think they obviously believe there's tremendous potential in India. They're all looking at India. If they look at India relative to the rest of the world, the mood is extremely positive. I think all of them want to see some of the changes, legislative changes that are required to achieve the potential of India happen. And to that extent, I think most of people are patient. They want to see how the changes are happening. So I don't think there is any despondency as far as foreign investors are concerned, but they would definitely like to see change happen faster to realize the potential of the country. I think if I look at boardrooms in India, definitely I think if you look at the economic results and everything, people would want things to move a bit more faster, and to that extent, important legislative amendments, important legislative bills, which will give impetus to the economy in India. People are awaiting that right now.
So given what you just said, Rajiv Memani, would it be fair to say that foreign capital is more patient at this point in time in comparison to India Inc.?
Yeah, I would think that if I compare both of them, I don't think they're being less patient or foreign investors are being more patient, but I would say definitely that if I look at long-term foreign capital, I would say that definitely I think they're probably still, if I was to gauge the level of excitement between both of them, I would say that the foreign investors seem to be more excited with what's happening.
Kiran, how big a casualty will it be for the reform agenda for India Inc. if the goods and services tax bill is not cleared? It looks highly unlikely that it will go through in the monsoon session. If we don't see a special session go through, then we're down to the winter session, which makes it unlikely that we will see the rollout on April 1, 2016. How big a setback will that be?
It is a big setback for the country, and I think it is a cause for concern, because I think we are losing huge economic opportunities and opportunities to legislate important economic reforms. I know that, companies will basically rely on state-level policies then to basically progress their projects and other, business aspirations. And I think progressive states will actually score over those that don't. But I wish, the parliamentarians would realize that what they are doing is really basically we are shooting ourselves in the foot.
Well, that is exactly what it seems to be at this point in time. Rajiv Memani, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Let's now move to the big cabinet decision. Telecom companies finally have some flexibility with the spectrum that they own, but with some riders, spectrum sharing norms have been cleared by the cabinet, but spectrum's trading has still not been allowed. Malvika is here with the details. Malvika, very quickly wrap up the details of what's been announced now that we do have the details.
Well, spectrum sharing guidelines have been, cleared by the cabinet, and primarily companies having spectrum in the same license area, in the same bandwidth, will be able to share spectrum with each other. They will have to pay a spectrum usage charge on the entire spectrum that is shared, even if they partially use some amount of spectrum. So in case they are using only, say, 2.5 megahertz of spectrum with one another, and the company which is lending the spectrum has 5 megahertz, then the receiver company will have to pay spectrum user charge on the entire spectrum holding of 5 megahertz. Besides this, telecom companies will only be able to share spectrum if both companies have administratively allocated spectrum, or if both companies have spectrum which has been acquired by way of paying a market price. So all in all, these guidelines are on expected lines. While they will ease burden on the infrastructure of companies and improve efficiency of services, as far as consolidation in the sector is concerned and improving use of spectrum overall is concerned, spectrum trading guidelines is something that the industry will be now looking forward to.
Okay, Malvika, appreciate you joining us. Quick reactions now from Rajan Matthew, Director General of the COAI, and Kunal Bajaj. Gentlemen, good to have you back on the show now that we do have the details. Rajan Matthew, let me get you to respond to what Malvika was just saying. Spectrum sharing will be allowed only for access service providers where the licensees have spectrum in the same band. Leasing will not be allowed, and of course, you should have acquired the spectrum administrative pricing or market-determined pricing. How would you react to that?
So, Shireen, overall, I think it's very positive for the industry. I believe the cabinet guidelines have principally followed what TRAI had recommended. One thing that I understand was that previously the TRAI had said that the sharing would only happen on the same bands. I understand that the cabinet decision is to allow it across bands. So that is definitely
No, it says
positive.
where both licenses have spectrum in the same band, Rajan.
Yeah, so again, that is something we would have to take a look at when the details come out. Some folks have indicated that a cross-band. And again, remember, Shireen, the TRAI recommendations came before all of these auctions had taken place. Now that quote-unquote liberalized spectrum has happened, this notion that 1800 can only share with 1800 and 9 can only share with 9 or 23 with 23, that all goes away because it's all technology neutral now. So I think the direction of the cabinet is that you could probably do, but that's definitely something we'll look at. But overall, I think it's quite positive for the industry. It helps with this whole issue of quality of service because it allows for capacity issues to be addressed among operators.
Okay, Kunal Bajaj, a quick reaction now that we do have some of the details. Would you say that some of the riders that have been attached to the sharing policy are onerous, or do you believe that this is, as Rajan Matthew was pointing out, entirely good news for telcos?
Hi, Shireen. Good evening. I think, contrary to what we were discussing a little bit earlier this evening, given that the riders now specifically state that both operators have to have spectrum in the same band, that it has to have been acquired in the same way, i.e. either both are administrative or both are auction, and if even one of them is auction-oriented, then the other guy also has to pay the difference in price so that they come to the same playing field. I think that basically sets us back to some of the critique and criticism that the industry was having of the recommendations previously around. Because what this essentially means, and not to oversimplify it, but basically it means that this will only really work in the 1800 megahertz band, and it'll only work where some of the smaller operators who've acquired the spectrum from auction are able to then make that spectrum available for sharing to some of the larger operators who are constrained for capacity. But we're not really going to see a situation, I think, where through sharing new LTE or new 3G spectrum is really going to be made available. By and large, this is really only going to help out primarily 2G and 1800.
Okay, Rajan Matthew, you want to respond to that? Kunal Bajaj saying that it will not impact the entire industry, and the conditions that have now been imposed as part of the policy are onerous.
And so I do agree with Kunal on this matter of administrative spectrum and spectrum acquired through auction. But again, remember that a significant amount of the spectrum has now come through the route of auction. So again, 1800, 900, 2100, 2300 are all candidates for sharing. How much of the sharing will take place lies to be seen. But again, I think the devil's in the details, so we'll have to wait to see. But definitely as an overall concept, the industry has been very supportive of the TRAI's recommendation. And we understand that by and large, that is what Cabinet has approved. So the industry position, except for a few things that we've highlighted, are by and large positive for the industry.
Well, watch out for some of those telecom stocks in trade tomorrow. It promises to be an action-packed day. It is the last day of Parliament, so expect fireworks to continue. And of course, there's lots of court action as well, with the Nestle verdict expected at 11. From all of us here for now, goodbye. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18 for the action.